Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. And now we're going to start Locked On MLB.
You are Locked On MLB. Your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. If you're looking at my lower third right there, you could please call me Sully. I am a comedian, a television producer, a video maker, a teacher. I've been written in a bunch of magazines, and I've appeared on HBO Sports and ESPN2. And right now my collar is popped up and I look like Dracula. For those of you watching the YouTube, I look like Dracula. But we're up late and coming back from the dead like Dracula, I try to tie it back in there, is the fate of the Seattle Mariners. And we'll be talking with Dane Gonzalez of Locked On Mariners about how this team that looked like it was going to have one of the most disappointing seasons in their history suddenly have turned back into contenders. And we all know what happens when teams get red hot in the second half. I'll tell you what happens here. You can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and on Instagram. Thanks so much for making us your first listen, as we're available on all your free podcasts and catchers. You could follow me. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. So we're recording this. It is late on the 14th day of July, 2022. Happy Bastille Day for those of you who celebrate. This is probably going to be dropped on the 15th. So we're right smack dab in the middle of July. And lo and behold, as we record this, the Seattle Mariners are a playoff team. And I happen to see that Dane Gonzalez of Locked On Mariners was up. And I said, hey, man, let's jump on board. Do ourselves a podcast. That's how that's how far in advance I planned some of these podcasts. Hey, Ty, what's up, man? Happy winning streak and being up this late.
Yeah. I'm also, I'm on the East Coast technically. I'm in Toronto. It's not technically the East Coast, but I'm in the Eastern time zone. So it's even a little bit later than it would be for most Mariner fans. But I'm absolutely vibing right now. I mean, how could I not be watching this baseball team? It is the greatest boost of energy you could possibly get, winning 11 games in a row. Look, the last time the Mariners won 11 games in a row, or 10 games in a row for that matter, I don't know when the last time they won 11 in a row was, but the last time they won 10 in a row, I was 6 years old. So this is kind of new ground for me. So getting used to it. I like it.
2018?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
By the way, I love you are wearing the Mariner cap from when Griffey was a rookie in 1989. Yep. That's what I have. I should have busted out. I have the trident over the star. That's my favorite. That's my favorite Mariner hat. I like the trident, but trident over the star, I think it looks amazing.
The Gaylord Perry.
Right, the Gaylord Perry. That was Mark Langston. That was Alvin Davis. Ray Quinones, Jim Presley, Sean Scott. Wait, was it the Bradley? Was it Scott Bradley?
Scott. Yeah.
But who was the outfielder they had? They had an outfielder who wound up being traded to Philadelphia.
I'll
remember
Bradley.
it later. Oh, that was Scott Bradley? Okay.
Well, he didn't go to Philly. So maybe, who are you talking about?
Who am I thinking of? Okay, if you know who I'm thinking of, please send me a tweet at Sully Baseball and remind me of which player from the obscure years of the Mariners where they were fun as hell but couldn't win any games. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is they're winning games like crazy right now. And let's just go over tonight's game, because tonight's game is kind of encapsulates a little bit of the craziness of this 11-game winning streak, because they went into with a 10-game winning streak. And, I've said on this podcast before, there's never a bad time to have a 10-game winning streak. But they fell behind pretty quickly to the Texas Rangers, and it looked like, okay, this is probably where it ends. This is probably where it ends. And they got an inside the park home run from Mr. Haggerty that seemed to spark the team. And before you could say Harold Reynolds being thrown out by Bo Jackson, the Mariners suddenly took a lead in this crazy game. And the bullpen held on. The Mariners pitching staff did not let up a run after the fifth inning. And despite Gonzalez not pitching particularly well, the rest of the team picked him up. And talk to me a little bit about what you were thinking about when you were seeing this pretty bonkers game unfold in Texas.
Yeah, so I mean, before the game, I kind of felt like this might be where the streak dies. JP Crawford was a late scratch. You got Martin Perez on the bump, who's been fantastic for the Rangers, and he was fantastic tonight. Marco's been kind of hit and miss for most of the year. When he's great, and when he's bad, he's really bad. And tonight he was really bad, especially in the first two innings of this game. So I just kind of expected what was happening, and I look, they've won 10 in a row. They're not going to win every single game from here on out. That's fine. They can lose this game. We'll move on to tomorrow. The matchup wasn't great for them. But I don't know. I kind of had this feeling with the way that this winning streak has gone and with the magic that they have been able to find over the last 3 weeks. It's very 2021-esque. And the thing about the 2021 Mariners is that they were able to win games like this. They would fall down 7-8 runs and it didn't really feel like it was over. And tonight, that was the case. It was 5-1. And, as Perez's pitch count kept on going up, I'm thinking, they're going to get into this bullpen. And this Texas bullpen hasn't been very good this year. And if they get that chance, they might be able to squeak this one out. And sure enough, they just kept chipping away. They got the big inside the Parker, but once they got into the actual Texas bullpen, they were starting to string together some base runners. They got some walks. Rangers pitchers just weren't able to command anything for the most part tonight. And the Mariners took full advantage of it. And it's, again, it's a 2021-esque win by the Mariners. And I mean, again, I said this on Twitter. This team has the juice right now, and there's no stopping that. When a team just has that magic going for them, you can't get in the way of it.
Right. I mean, and Haggerty is, he was in the middle of everything today, including being part of the Ty Francis RBI single. It scored 2 runs, and Haggerty, racing home with the go-ahead run. And then, the Rangers tried to mount a comeback in the 9th inning, and they just couldn't push that run across. And give the Mariner bullpen credit, that this is the Rangers can hit. Obviously, the Rangers have some good bats on their team. As always, Texas has always been a good offensive club. And, this was a game – when you win 11 in a row, inevitably you're going to win some games that you have no business winning.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this was absolutely, when you took a look at it, this was absolutely a game that the odds were just so stacked against them that, if I were a betting man, I would have completely bet that the Rangers were going to win this game, even before the game. And when they took the big lead, you just thought this is a surefire bet that the Rangers are going to have this game. And if you're going to make any bets, go to BetOnline. It's your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including the regular Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. And hey, Let's do one quick shout out because there's some big events coming on in the Locked On MLB world, including the coverage of the Major League Baseball draft. Major League Baseball draft is right around the corner, and you know who is going to be the big name in there. That's going to be Lindsey Crosby. Right around the first round of the Major League Baseball draft, you got to join MLB Prospects host Lindsey Crosby and baseball expert Jeff Ellis, who was just on the show a couple of days ago. They are going to go deep on the future stars of Major League Baseball on the show on July 17th on the Locked On MLB Prospects show. Subscribe now to Locked On MLB Prospects so you get notified when they go live on MLB Draft Night. And your pal Sully is probably going to make a cameo appearance in that. I have some big questions to ask, including the fact that the other team that's going on a massive rampage, the Baltimore Orioles, have the first pick in the draft. And I kind of, look at, you almost have to, especially in baseball, have to take the mentality of got to just draft the best player available, blah, 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 blah. But, there's got to be at least a temptation, knowing the team's already a contender, will probably be a contender in 2023. Do you draft someone who could get to the major leagues really fast? I don't know. I talk a little bit about that. We have a bonus episode being dropped this week. That's right. You get 6 episodes of Locked On MLB this week. 6. Do you know why? Because your pal Sully can't stop recording. Dan Roddick's, who has a long time, I'm talking 45-year column at the Baltimore Sun, and he's a friend of the old podcast, and he's a friend of this podcast, and I've been on his podcast. A prolific writer of the Baltimore Sun, rabid Baltimore Oriole fan. We got into a huge discussion about the Baltimore Orioles, who are currently in a 10-game winning streak and trying to assert themselves into the playoffs. But I can't help but wonder if maybe they should try to draft someone to help them. But we're not talking Orioles right now. We're going to go to the home of Phil Bradley. That's who I was trying to think of. Phil Bradley.
Yes. There we go. Yeah.
Right-handed, kind of like a line drive hitter with some speed. Was not the big power hitter, but had a high batting average. And he asked for more than $9.75 an hour, and therefore was traded to the Philadelphia Phillies. That was the case. But the great fun Mariner of the mid-'80s, who the worst. I'll just say this: the worst move that the Mariners made during that period of time in the '80s, when the West was winnable. There was a period of time before the A's had their big resurgence. The West was winnable. The Royals won the West with some mediocre teams. The Twins won the West with a mediocre team. There was a couple of Angels teams. Well, one Angels team was great, but there were some questionable Western Division winners then. So it was a winnable division. The worst mistake the Mariners made in the 80s is they let go of pitching coach Dave Duncan. Dave Duncan was their pitching coach, and we all saw that he turned into a pitcher, the pitcher whisperer when he was the coach for both Oakland and St. Louis. Turned so many has-beens and started doing it in the 80s, turning around Stewart, turning around Eckersley, turning around Bob Welch. And he could have done that with a pitching staff that already had Langston and Mike Moore. And what could he have done with Scott Bankhead? What could he have done with Billy Swift and all those Edwin Nunez, all those talented pitchers who didn't pan out? Could we have had a Mariner dynasty with the Trident star cap? I don't know, but we're talking this current era. I picked the Mariners to win the division. I liked them. I thought they brought in Robbie Ray. And I didn't see a resurgence with Justin Verlander. And I didn't see that Pena was going to step right in and fill Carlos Correa's shoes. But I also didn't see the Mariners getting off to such a grotesque start to the point where I actually suggested that they fire Service and hire Joe Madden. Service must have heard that, because I don't think they've lost a game since I said that on the podcast. So what the heck happened? How did this team suddenly turn the switch on?
I don't really know, to be quite honest with you. Honestly, it doesn't make any sense. Especially because this particular win streak started right after the brawl and when the suspensions started to go into effect. Like really when they hit their peak in this streak in San Diego is when JP Crawford started that's when JP Crawford started serving his suspension. And that from that point forward, I mean, they've been so undermanned in general because Kyle Lewis has been hurt. Mitch Haniger has been hurt.
Right.
Tom Murphy's out for the season. Ty France got hurt in Oakland. You know, they were doing this with all these guys out.
And France was off to a great start. France was off to a tremendous start.
And I'm going to use the platform here on Locked On MLB to say that he was, once again, robbed of the All-Star game consistently. JD Martinez, Corey Seager, really, guys? Really? We're putting those guys in over Ty France? Anyway, I digress. So, yes, the Mariners have done this with basically guys like Sam Haggerty, Dylan Moore, Justin Upton playing significant playing time, and they're just finding ways to win. A lot of that has been the pitching. The bullpen has been the best in baseball over the last 3 weeks, which, I mean, that was their calling card last year. And the bullpen was really disappointing through the first month and a half, 2 months of this year. And now it's just kind of figured itself out. And so that's been probably the biggest boon here for the Mariners is they're able to win close games now. They weren't able to win all those one-run games. And if we remember last year, they were winning all those one-run games, and they just weren't doing that this year. So now they're winning the one-run games. They are, another thing too is Julio Rodriguez has basically turned into a superstar over the last 2 months. And so that's been huge. And that's also made up for the lack of Ty France. That's made up for kind of the disappointing year for Jesse Winker. That's made up for, the absence of JP Crawford and his little slump that he was hitting. And, other guys have stepped up. They traded for Carlos Santana back on June 28th. He's been amazing since he's come over. He helped them win 2 games against the Toronto Blue Jays. He hit 2 game-winning home runs. Like and on top of that, he gets on base. And the Mariners were really struggling to get on base, to get guys on base and to capitalize on that. And now with Santana, with Eugenio Suarez, those guys are really carrying the load right now for this team. And
I was going to ask you, when did Julio Rodriguez really start taking off? Because I wonder if that really kind of coincides with, because, a month ago, actually less than a month ago, the 19th of June, the Mariners were 10 games under 500. 10 games under. And and we're approaching, and that was, where was they were shut out. They got swept. No, they didn't get swept. They lost 3 out of 4. 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 to the Angels. And then they lost the series to Boston. They lost the series to Minnesota. They were a mess. They were 10 games under 500. Yeah. And
they've won 19 of 22 since then.
They've lost 1 game this month.
Yeah.
And and they have Robbie Ray pitching on Friday in Texas. And he's been incredible too, by the way. Like he found a 2-seam fastball on June 6th. He got shelled by the Astros, gave up 3 home runs in the first 2 innings of that game, started throwing this 2-seam fastball, which he hadn't thrown for like 3 years. And now that's just fixed him. He now has a pitch that generates weak contact and gets the ball on the ground. And he's been one of the most efficient pitchers in all of baseball. If Shohei Ohtani wasn't doing what he's been doing over the last month, Robbie Ray might be the best pitcher in baseball over the last month. Like, he's just been that good. And so that's been another big part of it. The starting rotation has been good enough, just all around. And, they're capitalizing on offense despite not having some of their biggest bats. And now that they have France back, who's kind of still, dealing with the elbow injuries, certainly not 100%, but he had a great night tonight. And now that, Jesse Winker's back from suspension, Julio's back from suspension, JP Crawford's back from suspension, they're starting to get healthier. They're starting to get more at full strength, and it's really exciting. But to go back to your question about Julio, when did this start for him? Kind of the start of May, really. May 1st was when he hit his first career home run, and from there he's taken off. He won AL Rookie of the Month that month. He won AL Rookie of the Month in June. The numbers were a little bit down in June in terms of like average and stuff like that, but the power was more prominent there. It was more prevalent, and he's just kind of
taken off from he's still stealing a ton of bases. It's a very real possibility at this point now that he's going to be a 30 home run, 40 steal guy as long as he stays healthy. That's ridiculous for a 21-year-old. He's the fastest player in MLB history to reach 15 home runs and 20 steals in his rookie year. That's like, he's just, and on top of that, he's playing a plus defensive center field. And so he's the complete package.
Go back to Robbie Ray for a second too. I've gone to Baseball Reference.com, the single greatest website in the history on earth, and I know that ERA is not the end all be all, but it is a decent gauge of how many runs of pitchers letting up. In April, Ray's ERA was 4.15. In May, his ERA was 5.34. In June, it was 2.19, and this month it's been 1.42. His ERA between May and July is down nearly 4 runs. And if you look at, he's still, I mean, all year long, he's been averaging about 6 innings a start. And whether his ERA was high or whether it was low. So he's been giving them innings. But now when it's, again, Ray obviously won the Cy Young Award last year. That may have been an aberration. That may have been your R.A. Dickey had one great year, but he is a fine pitcher nonetheless. And to see that he started off with mediocre or worse, and then when he started pitching well, by a remarkable coincidence, that's also around the time the team started turning around. Knowing that you can hand the ball to your ace, that maybe there's something psychological. If we brought this guy in, this defending Cy Young Award winner, to be an ace, and he wet the bed all May, I mean, that's got to be a kick to the groin, saying this guy's supposed to be the person that we turn to every 5 days and they say that's a W. And we're starting to see him pitching that way really since the second week of June.
Yeah, he's I think he's only allowed 4 runs over his last 6 starts. I mean, it's incredible. He's 8th right now in Major League Baseball in innings pitched, as you said. And we're starting to see the strikeouts come, because that was another thing that was really lacking for him in the first couple of months. It's the strikeouts, and he's always been a huge strikeout guy. Whether he was in Arizona, whether he was in Toronto, it doesn't matter. He was always a high strikeout guy, even if he was struggling in ERA, struggling with the walks, etc. And so now that's finally come. He's back to 10 strikeouts per 9 innings pitched. That's where you want to see him, and the walks are not as prevalent as they were back when he was in Arizona. They have gone up from when he was in Toronto last year, but it's just now with the 2-seam fastball, now that he's able to get a pitch that breaks away from right-handed hitters, he's able to generate more weak contact, generating more ground balls. That's huge, because like the guy, I mean, he has a home run issue. That's always going to be a problem for him. So keeping the ball out of the air as much as possible has been massive for him. It's completely changed his entire profile. And honestly, I think this is a product that is more conducive to success than what he was doing last year. Even though that he won the Cy Young last year, I think this is the perfect version of Robbie Ray that we could possibly see.
Well, the whole reason for bringing him in is to win and to create some great new memories for Mariners fans, and maybe even, get a ring. And if you want memories and get a ring, may I suggest you go to BlueNile.com. Whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment, find jewelry as unique as the person you love with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. If you're looking for fine jewelry but having trouble choosing, Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at any budget. Make your moments sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On MLB listeners, and heck, Locked On Mariner listeners too, will get $50 off of any purchase of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement rings. So use code Locked On. That's code Locked On. Plus, every order is insured, ships for free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. I wonder how many of my Locked On MLB listeners are on the verge of popping the question. If you are, I was going to say post it on Twitter, but that would kind of spoil the surprise because if your loved one is also following me on Twitter, that would kind of lose it. That would have the opposite of a BlueNile.com bag. Hey, Dane Gonzalez of Locked On Mariners. As we're recording this, the Mariners are a playoff team. And it
Yes.
helps the fact that the Red Sox have wet the bed, and that the Blue Jays have had some moments of spiraling. What if the Mariners and the Orioles are both playoff teams this year? That would have been.
I mean, the
would be
Mariners.
something.
I think we could wrap our heads around the Mariners, right? I think most baseball fans who are fairly in the know heading into the season would have
picked them to
expected
win
the
the
Mariners
division,
to be in the mix. Yeah, but the Orioles, though, that one has come out of nowhere. And I mean, the big thing for them is the pitching, right? Kind of same thing with the Mariners too.
Yeah.
Is they're getting good pitching out of their rotation. They're getting great contributions out of their bullpen, so that's been massive for them. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun watching what they've been doing. I watched. Did you watch that game that they had against Texas? The
Yes.
10-9 game. Wow,
Yeah.
that one was something. The Rugneto door home run, great stuff.
Yeah, well, we talked up Robbie Ray in the last segment. He's pitching tonight. He's pitching on Friday against Texas. This is, I mean, psychologically, I mean, I know I'm not supposed to look at the narrative. I'm only supposed to look at cold, hard numbers and just seeing everything binary. But there's got to be something for this team that had sky-high expectations. And I know I picked them to win the division. I think most people picked them to be a wild card team. I think most people picked Houston to win the division. If they win this series, even if the winning streak ends, but if they win this series against Texas and stay as one of the wild card teams going into the All-Star break, if you had asked any Seattle fan, would you be okay with the Mariners being one of the wild card teams heading to the All-Star break? I think 100 out of 100 Mariner fans polled would say yes. And so in some ways, despite all the craziness at the top and the suspensions and the disappointments and 10 games under 500, that they're back on track where you'd want to be, heading into the All-Star break and fighting alongside Tampa, who, they just swept Boston, so we'll see if they're back on track. Toronto, who just fired their manager. Boston, who has been extraordinarily inconsistent. They've had sometimes they look like they're world beaters, and sometimes they look like they're, egg beaters. And so there is no juggernaut in the American League wildcard situation. And the Mariners saying, well, we got to, we punched our card going to the All-Star break. Why shouldn't they think of themselves as one of the favorites to stay in that spot?
Well, yeah, and I think that's a huge piece to it, right? Is that none of these teams separated themselves from the pack while the Mariners were spiraling. And so that gave them all the chance in the world to make up this ground. And honestly, I think the Mariners, along with the Rays, are the most well-positioned to get significantly better this summer. Because, I mean, those two teams, they have the best farm systems in baseball. Obviously, the Mariners have fallen off a little bit because of graduations like Julio, like George Kirby, et cetera. But it's still a farm system that has a lot of pieces that a lot of teams are going to like, that a lot of teams are going to be wanting to trade with. So, the Blue Jays are going to be interesting too, but that team has a lot of holes. They are, I mean, the vibes are really bad around that team right now. They just fired their manager despite being tied for a wild card spot at the time. And they just lost to basically the Royals AAA team.
We had Jen Smith on the show just the other day, Blue Jays expert Jen Smith. And we were talking about how the firing of Charlie Montoyo may be a sort of a distraction ploy from the front office to sort of, as some criticisms being placed on the front office about maybe this team wasn't constructed as well as they had thought, that the firing of Montoyo will sort of put people off the scent, but also make the front office look really great if they happen to go on a big winning streak. They say, you see, it was that situation. But I thought the Blue Jays were going to win their division. I actually picked the Blue Jays to win the pennant. I didn't see the Yankees to be this good. I think the Yankees caught a lot of people by surprise. There's a lot of crow that has to be eaten. A lot of people who were calling for Cashman's head. And for Boone said, including me, Boone may win Manager of the Year this year. Cashman may win Executive of the Year. And I think that the fact that the Yankees have just been so overwhelmingly great, it has allowed for the other teams in the American League wildcard hunt sort of be packed. I think there's going to be 5 or 6 teams finishing between like 87 and 91 wins. I think it's going just like last year where it went down to the final day. I think it's going to be the same thing going to happen this year, especially if the White Sox can get their act together and the Cleveland Guardians can start to hit.
Yeah, so I think the big thing here too, where the Mariners have quite a bit of an advantage, is that a lot of the teams that they're in the mix with are going to play each other a lot. They're going to beat up on each other a lot. The Mariners only have 4 or 5 series left against teams that are currently above 500. The rest of the way, they've gotten most of their heavy lifting out of the way, and that's also a contributing factor to their poor start as well. They had a brutal month of May. Like, the schedule in the month of May was absurd. The teams that they had to face, they had to face the Blue Jays, they had to face the Mets, they had to face the Red Sox, they had to face the Astros. Like, they just went through the gauntlet, and it kicked their butt. But now that they're going to face the A's 13 more times. They're going to face the Rangers a bunch. They're going to face the Angels a bunch. They still got to play the White Sox one more time. They still got to play the Tigers 2 more times. They have a lot of relatively easy series on their schedule here where they can rack up some wins and start to create some separation here, because the Mariners have, in 2014, 2016, 2018, last year, they have been right in the mix where they've gone up to the final day, but they haven't been able to push it across the finish line. But instead of winning into the final day, just continue to stack wins now. Put some separation. Go get the first wild card, because also, by the way, the first wild card hosts the wild card round, hosts the 5th seed for all 3 games. And don't you want to end the drought and also have playoff baseball in Seattle? It'd be amazing.
The thing that you have to remember, though, is that sometimes those lousy teams you just mentioned can circle the calendar. I mean, take a look at what just happened this last week, where the Reds swept Tampa, and they almost swept the Yankees. They took 2 out of 3 from the Yankees. The one game they lost was an extra inning loss, and that was in the Bronx. And that was, when you have a team that is, getting their shins kicked in, sometimes they don't want to keep hearing how they're a pushover,
right?
And sometimes they've got nothing to play for. So you've seen plenty of teams sort of take advantage of that and win. But this is where the Mariners have to show their mettle. You have to win the games you're supposed to win, and if the Mariners can do that, then for the first time since 2001, there could at least be a Mariner, or a pair of Mariner postseason games. And get them off the schneid. And then what would be the longest drought after that? Because the COVID year wiped out, the Padres, the Marlins, and the White Sox all got in. So it'd be the Phillies.
Would it be the Phillies? Wow.
It would be the Phillies, which feels weird because they were so dominant at the beginning of, 11 years ago, they were so dominant. They were on the verge of a dynasty. Yeah, I just going it through my head, the Rolodex in my head. COVID, as I said, COVID allowed the Marlins and San Diego and the Chicago White Sox. The White Sox were in again last year. So I think it'd be Philadelphia.
It's Mariners and then Phillies and then Angels and Tigers. Those are the top 4.
Wow. So there you go. The Angels with the 2 most exciting players in baseball. And
insane.
They're not even in
insane, right?
For a 3rd wild card spot. Well, that's a great thing that happened to the Mariners too, was the collapse of the Angels.
Yeah.
The Angels got off to a fast start, and then they wet the bed so badly it cost a Hall of Fame manager his gig. Despite having a solid season from Trout and Ohtani continued to do stuff we've never seen before, the fact that the Angels have tumbled, the Mariners have said, hey, well, let's pick up the pieces. So look at, if nothing else, it's given a boost to energy to Seattle fans. And if I had a Built Bar ad read right now, I'd have an absolutely perfect lead into it, but I don't. But I do want to say, hey, look we have the great Dane Gonzalez here from Locked On Mariners talking about his team that just cannot lose. And thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen. Make Locked On Mariners your second listen. We do have a bonus episode with Dan Roddick of the Baltimore Sun. We recorded it a few days ago. I know I've been teasing it for a little bit, but I've just had to edit it. Make your next listen after that be Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby. He said Prospect Encyclopedia is going deep in the MLB stars of tomorrow, and check out his terrific show, especially with the MLB draft right around the corner. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Hey, Mr. Gonzalez, where can people find your terrific podcast?
Yeah, so you can check us out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, all those good things. And you can check us out on Twitter as well at LO_Mariners. And yeah, be sure to check out the YouTube. Subscribe. We've been having a great week so far. We're hoping to get to 2,000 subscribers on there by the end of this month. We're on our way. So help us get there.
And I'm at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. And I'm your pal Sully. My personal account is Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking Mariners, team that just cannot lose with Dane Gonzalez of Locked On Mariners. This has been Locked On MLB for, it's going to drop on the 15th day of July, 2022. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please, I'm begging you, call me Sully.